I had been working the loading docks of Station Arcturus for 16 cycles, and I thought I had seen everything. Well, not everything, obviously. The universe is stupidly large, and I am just one Valkyrie with 4 eyes and a pension plan. But I had seen enough to know that humans were, how do we say it in the trade language, absolute lunatics. My name is Qrix, and I am what you might call a logistics coordinator. That is the fancy title they gave me, so I would not complain about the pay. Really, I just make sure cargo gets from point A to point B without exploding, leaking, or gaining sentience. It happens more often than you would think. The day Mira Kask arrived at my dock, I was having a perfectly terrible morning. 3 shipments delayed, 1 container of plasma gel that somehow started singing opera, and my second stomach was giving me problems again. Then she walked in. Humans always walk with this bizarre confidence, like they own the station. This one was small by human standards, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair tied back, and these startling green eyes that seemed to calculate your net worth in half a second. She wore the standard grey coveralls of a dock worker, but hers had grease stains that looked like they had been earned, not decorative. "You Qrix?" she asked, not waiting for me to acknowledge her presence. "I am logistics coordinator, Qrixtal Meandor of..." "Great. I am your new heavy loader. Where do you want me?" I blinked, all 4 eyes in sequence, which is the Valkyrie equivalent of a double take. "Heavy loader? You are human." "Last time I checked," she smiled, and there was something predatory about it. Humans have these flat teeth in front and sharp ones in back, and you never quite know if they are being friendly or sizing you up for a meal. "No offense intended," I said carefully, because humans are also famously touchy about perceived insults. "But heavy loading requires someone who can lift a minimum of 800 krells. That is about, let me convert, 400 of your pounds," repeatedly. "For hours," she shrugged. "Sounds about right. You weigh what, maybe 60 krells? 70? 130 in pounds. But who is counting?" I pulled up her file on my datapad. Mira Kask, age 24, from a place called Estonia on Earth. Previous experience included mining operations on Kepler Station, construction work on the Mars colonies, and something listed as freelance problem solving, which could mean anything from diplomatic negotiations to breaking kneecaps. With humans it was usually the latter. "Look," I said, trying to be diplomatic, "I have nothing against humans. Some of my best customers are humans. But the insurance costs alone if you get injured. I will sign a waiver." It is not just about waivers. The equipment we move here, it is military grade, fusion cores, magnetic containment units, atmospheric processors that weigh more than a small shuttle. One slip, and you are a very thin paste. She leaned against my desk, and I noticed her forearms. They were not bulky, not like the Krillian dock workers with their genetically enhanced muscles, but they were dense, corded with something that looked like steel cable under skin. "Tell you what, give me a test. 1 container. If I cannot handle it, I walk away, no complaints, and you never have to see my fragile human bones again." I liked her. I should not have, but I did. There was something about the way she said fragile human bones with that little smirk that made me think she knew exactly how this was going to go. "Fine. Bay 7. Container Delta 339. It is a mid-grade cargo pod, only about 600 krells. If you can move it from the south wall to the loading track, I will consider your application." She nodded and headed toward Bay 7. I followed, because I am not an idiot. Also because I wanted to see this spectacular failure up close. Maybe get it on video for the crew lounge. We could all use a laugh. Bay 7 was one of our larger storage areas, a cavernous space with containers stacked 3 high and loading mechs parked along the walls. The other workers, a mix of Valkyrie, Threxians and one very tired-looking Ganthroid, stopped what they were doing to watch. Humans have a reputation, you see. Everybody knows the stories. The ones where they survive things that should kill them, or lift things that should crush them, or just generally refuse to die when the universe very clearly wants them to. But stories are story. Reality is usually far more disappointing. Container Delta 339 sat against the south wall, a rectangular block of reinforced alloy about 8 feet on each side. The readout on the side confirmed it's 640 krales, well within the danger zone for a human. Mira walked around it once, examining the handholds, checking the balance. Then she bent down, grabbed the lower handles, and lifted. I expected grunting, straining, maybe a tragic snapping sound followed by screaming and a lot of paperwork. What I got was Mira standing up smoothly, the container rising off the ground like it weighed nothing, and her walking it across the bay with the casual ease of someone carrying a box of spare parts. One of the Thraxians dropped his scanner. It clattered on the deck plating with a sound that echoed through the sudden silence. She set the container down on the loading track, perfectly aligned, then turned to face me. She was not even breathing hard. That good enough? Or do you want me to juggle it? My translator must have glitched because I found myself making a sound that does not exist in any language I know. How did? Physics. She dusted off her hands. And calcium. You know, bone stuff. That is not possible. Human skeletal structure cannot support. Cannot support what? She walked back toward me, and I realized the entire bay had gone quiet. See, that is the thing everyone gets wrong about humans. You look at our specs, our averages, our medical reports, and you think you know what we can do. But here is the thing about averages. They are boring. They are safe. They are what happens when you never push, never test, never tell yourself that physics is more of a suggestion than a rule. A Ganthroid named Pelox stepped forward. Ganthroid are big, nearly 7 feet tall and built like biological tanks. Pelox had been the senior heavy loader for 5 cycles. She got lucky. The container was lighter than listed. Mira looked at him, and I swear her smile got wider. You want to check the manifest? Pelox pulled up the data. His face, which is usually a pleasant shade of blue, turned a sickly purple. It says 800 krells. Does it now? Mira examined her fingernails like she was bored. Weird. Must have grabbed the wrong one. Should I put it back and try again? I checked the container number again. Delta 339. Standard military fusion containment housing, rated for heavy transport only. 800 krells minimum weight, often more depending on the core inside. She had just lifted 800 krells, casually. With a smile, Pelox made a sound like a deflating balloon. That is impossible. Yeah, people keep saying that. Mira turned back to me. So, do I have the job, or are we going to stand around debating the tensile strength of my femurs? I should have said no. I should have cited regulations, safety protocols, the fact that my insurance adjuster would have a collective aneurysm if he saw what just happened. But I looked at Mira, standing there with that absolutely insufferable grin. I thought about all the times I had been told what Velkari could not do. How we were too small, too weak, too risk-averse. You start tomorrow? 600 krells per hour standard rate, plus hazard pay. Make it 700 and you have a deal. 650. Done. She shook my hand, which is a human gesture of agreement that involves grabbing appendages and squeezing. Her grip could have crushed rocks. After she left, Pelox approached me, still looking purple. You just hired a human to do heavy loading. I did. She is going to get killed. Maybe. She is going to get us killed. Also possible. Then why? Because Pelox. I have worked this dock for 16 cycles, and that is the first time I have ever seen someone lift 800 krells like it was a bag of snacks. Do you know what we could accomplish with someone like that? The contracts we could take? The bonuses? Pelox grunted but did not argue further. Ganthroid are practical above all else. If there was profit involved, they could overlook minor details like physics defying humans. The next day, Mira showed up early, not just on time but a full hour before shift start, which is unheard of for dock workers. She brought her own lunch, a strange human concoction she called a sandwich, and a thermos of something that smelled like liquid violence. Coffee, she explained when she caught me staring. Want some? I value my internal organs. Suit yourself. The morning started normally enough. We had a shipment of atmospheric processors coming in from a military supply depot, destined for a terraforming operation in the outer rim. Each processor weighed about 900 kilos and required a 2-person team with a loading mech. Mira looked at the first processor, then at the mech, then back at me. I am guessing you want me to use the machine. That would be the safe, logical, legally mandated approach. Yes. Boring. She walked over to the processor, examined it for a moment, then deadlifted it off the transport pallet. Pelox made that deflating balloon sound again. She carried it across the bay, set it down with the precision of a surgical instrument, and came back for the next one. By the third processor, she was humming. Some human song about working and money, and probably violence. Human songs usually involve at least two of those three things. By midday she had moved 20 units. Alone. Without a mech. Without breaking a sweat. The other workers were starting to whisper. Not the usual dock gossip about who was stealing lunches or which supervisor was sleeping with which cargo inspector. No, this was different. This was the kind of whisper that happens when people witness something they cannot quite explain. Something that challenges their understanding of reality. Is she on combat stimulants? One of the Valkyrie asked me during break. I checked her blood work. Clean. Genetic modification? Standard human baseline. Then how? I do not know. And that was the truth. I had no idea. Humans were strong for their size. Everyone knew that. But this was beyond strong. This was something else entirely. 3 days into Mira's employment, everything went catastrophically wrong. We were loading a special shipment for the Terran Military Expeditionary Force, which meant extra security, extra paperwork, and extra reasons for me to develop new stress-related digestive issues. The cargo was classified, but everyone on the dock knew what it was. You cannot hide a Mark 7 fusion core. They hum at a frequency that makes your teeth itch, and they mass at around 1,200 krells each. 1,200 krells. That is roughly half a ton in human measurements. The kind of weight that requires specialized equipment, and at least 4 people who have made peace with their mortality. The transport captain, a grizzled human named Victor Reeves, supervised the unloading personally. He had the kind of face that suggested he had seen every possible way the universe could kill you, and had survived most of them, possibly out of spite. I want this done by the book, Reeves barked at me, his translator rendering his words in flat, official tones. No shortcuts, no creative interpretations of safety protocols, and absolutely no dropping my fusion cores. Understood completely, I assured him, all 4 eyes focused on conveying sincerity. My crew is fully trained. Is that a human on your loading team? He was staring at Mira, who was currently carrying 2 standard cargo pods stacked on top of each other, walking with the relaxed posture of someone out for a pleasant stroll. Each pod weighed 300 krells. Yes, that is Mira. She is quite competent. She is going to hurt herself. Reeves said it like a fact, like gravity or thermodynamics. I have seen it 100 times. Young loader thinks they are invincible, tries to impress everyone, ends up in medical with a crushed spine. She has been here 3 days and moved more cargo than my previous team did in a week. Then she has 3 days left before statistics catch up with her. He turned back to his ship. Get the heavy mechs ready. I want those cores secured in Bay 3 within 2 hours. The problem manifested exactly 43 minutes later. The first fusion core came down the cargo ramp on a gravitational pallet, floating serenely like a deadly metallic cloud. 4 of my crew, including Pelox, guided it toward the waiting heavy mech. Everything was going according to procedure, which should have been my first warning that disaster was imminent. The gravitational pallet hiccuped. I do not know what caused it. Maybe a power fluctuation, maybe a cosmic ray. Maybe the universe just decided it was bored. The pallet dropped 6 inches, the core tilted, and suddenly 1,200 krells of extremely expensive, extremely volatile fusion technology was sliding off the pallet at an angle that would send it crashing into the deck, into the unshielded deck, where it would crack open and kill everyone within 100 meters. Time did that weird thing it does during disasters, where everything happens too fast and too slow simultaneously. I saw Pelox dive backward. I saw the other crew members scatter. I saw Captain Reeves, 50 feet away, start to shout something that my translator could not process fast enough. And I saw Mira sprint toward the falling core, not away, toward. She covered the distance in maybe 2 seconds, which should not be possible, but apparently human leg muscles contain some kind of biological rocket fuel. She reached the core just as it tilted past the point of no return, sliding off the pallet with the inevitability of tragedy. She caught it, not with a mech, not with equipment, with her hand. 1,200 krells of fusion core, falling at accelerating velocity, and she just reached up and stopped it. Her feet slid backward on the deck plating, leaving scorch marks from the friction. Her arms should have been ripped from their sockets. Her spine should have compressed into powder. Every bone in her body should have shattered like glass. Instead, she grunted, adjusted her grip, and lifted the core back onto the pallet. The gravitational field re-engaged with a sound like a sigh of relief. The core stabilized. Crisis averted. Mira stepped back, rolled her shoulders like she had just finished a light workout, and looked around at the dozen beings staring at her with expressions of existential horror. "Well," she said cheerfully, "that was exciting." Captain Reeves walked over slowly, like he was approaching something dangerous that might startle. "Did you just catch a Mark 7 fusion core with your bare hands?" "Technically I caught it with my hands and my entire skeletal structure, but yeah, basically. That weighs 1,200 krells, I know. I can read the manifest. Human bone density cannot possibly what?" There was that smile again, the one that suggested she knew something the rest of us did not. "Look, Captain, I appreciate your concern. Really. But I have been lifting heavy things since I was 8 years old. Started with hay bales on my grandparents' farm, worked my way up to industrial equipment, and now I am here, catching fusion cores because apparently someone forgot to maintain their grav pallets." One of Reeves' crew members, a young technician, spoke up nervously. "The pallet was inspected this morning. It was functioning perfectly." "Then inspect it again," Mira suggested. "Because perfect equipment does not just fail randomly. Usually, they found the problem an hour later. Someone had installed a counterfeit power regulator, probably to save costs, and it had degraded under the load. Could have happened to any shipment, any time. Just our terrible luck, it happened with a fusion core." Reeves looked at the faulty component, then at Mira, then back at the component. "You saved my ship. If that core had breached, the chain reaction would have taken out half the station." "Yeah, probably. So thank you." "You are welcome. Also, you owe me a beer." "I owe you considerably more than a beer." "Let us start with the beer and see where things go." After Reeves's ship departed, safely loaded with all 6 fusion cores and a renewed appreciation for proper maintenance schedules, the dock fell into an unusual silence. Everyone was looking at Mira differently now, not with suspicion or curiosity, but with something closer to awe. Palox approached her during the evening shift. "I need to know," he said, without preamble. "Are all humans like you? Like me, how? Strong? Impossibly, unreasonably strong." Mira laughed, and it was a genuine sound, not mocking. "No. Most humans are pretty average. We have gym enthusiasts who can lift maybe 200-300 pounds if they train hard. Professional strongmen and strong women who can hit 500-600. But 1,200, that is not normal, even for us." "Then how do you do it?" She was quiet for a moment, and I saw something flicker across her face. Something that looked almost sad. "You know what the worst thing about being human is? Everyone tells you your limits. Doctors tell you how much weight your bones can handle. Scientists tell you the maximum force your muscles can generate. Society tells you what jobs you can do, what goals you can achieve, what dreams are realistic." She picked up a small cargo pod, about 200 krells, and held it at arm's length like it weighed nothing. "I grew up on a farm where we could not afford modern equipment. If the harvester broke down, we fixed it ourselves. If something was too heavy, we lifted it anyway because there was no other choice. I learned early that the limits people tell you are usually just averages, and averages are for people who accept them." "But the physics," Pelox started. "Physics has limits. Biology has limits. But determination, stubbornness, the sheer refusal to accept that something cannot be done." She set the pod down gently. "Those things do not have limits. Or if they do, I have not found them yet." A week later, word of the fusion core incident had spread throughout the station. I started getting requests from other dock managers, other captains, all wanting to hire the human who could lift anything. Some offered me substantial sums for her contract. I declined them all, not because I am a particularly moral being. Valkyrie are practical creatures, and practical creatures understand value. Mira was worth more to me here, moving cargo and preventing disasters, than any one-time payment could match. Also, I liked her. Despite the stress she caused my digestive system, despite the way she broke every assumption about what was possible, I genuinely enjoyed having her around. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I found her sitting on a stack of containers, drinking that horrible coffee and watching ships come and go through the station viewport. "You ever think about what comes next?" I asked, climbing up beside her. "Next? After this? After loading docks and cargo bays, you could do anything. With your abilities, any military force in the galaxy would recruit you. Private security would pay a fortune. You could write your own ticket." She was quiet for a moment, watching a colony ship drift past, its hull scarred from 1,000 jumps through hyperspace. "You know why I like dock work? The glamorous lifestyle? The competitive salary? The constant risk of industrial accidents? Because it is honest." She took a sip of her coffee. "I lift things, I move things, and at the end of the day I can see exactly what I accomplished. These containers? They are going to colonies in the outer rim. Families who need supplies, equipment, hope. That fusion core I caught powers a terraforming operation that will make a dead world breathable for millions. It matters. Most people would not see it that way. Most people are idiots." She grinned at me. "No offense. None taken. It is statistically accurate." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the eternal ballet of ships and stations, cargo and crew, all the countless beings trying to make their way in an impossibly vast universe. "Qrix? Yes, thanks for giving me a chance. Most managers would have turned me away. Most managers are idiots." I paused. "No offense." She laughed, and the sound echoed through the empty bay. "None taken. It is statistically accurate." The next morning brought a new challenge. A diplomatic vessel from the consortium needed emergency repairs, and they had a damaged gravity drive that weighed 8,000 krells. The manufacturer recommended a specialized lifting team and equipment that would take 3 days to arrive. Mira looked at the specifications, looked at me, and smiled that terrible smile. "I have a really stupid idea," she said. "Why does that not surprise me? Get me 4 lifting harnesses, 6 anchor points, and about 200 meters of high tensile cable. What are you planning?" Physics and stubbornness. Mostly stubbornness. 6 hours later, the gravity drive was installed, the diplomatic vessel was on its way, and I was filling out incident reports that would probably get me fired or promoted. With station management, it was hard to predict which. Mira had lifted 8,000 krells. Not alone, she had used leverage, mechanical advantage, and a rigging system that would have made engineers weep with admiration. But at the critical moment, when the drive needed to be lifted that final meter into place, when the equipment was at its limit and failure seemed inevitable, she had simply grabbed the housing and lifted. 8,000 krells, 4 tons, 1 human. Captain Reeves, who had been overseeing the repairs, walked over to me afterward. "That human of yours is either the luckiest being alive or the most dangerous. Possibly both." "Probably both," I agreed. "If you ever want to sell her contract." "Not a chance." He nodded, understanding. "Good. The universe needs more people like her, beings who look at the impossible and treat it like a minor inconvenience." As the diplomatic vessel departed, I watched Mira return to her regular duties, moving standard cargo pods like nothing extraordinary had happened. Because to her, it probably had not. This was just another day, another load, another opportunity to prove that human bones were considerably more resilient than anyone believed. They said her bones would break. They said human physiology could not handle the stress. They said it was impossible. They were wrong. And somewhere in the cargo manifests, the incident reports, and the whispered legends that spread through stations across the sector, the truth remained, simple and undeniable. Never underestimate a human who has decided something needs to be lifted.